internships and jobs as soon as possible. Back to Mara.
Awesome. Thank you, Arunima. So I'll tell you very briefly a bit about APMC, what we do and what we stand for, and then I'll introduce Linda and let her take over. So we have three key offerings within the APM Club. First of all, we do a lot of networking. We offer a lot of networking opportunities among PMs from all over the world. We host a lot of events and fun ways for people to connect and to build strong networks. Second of all, we offer learning opportunities such as the PM Skills Lab, the Book Club, in which PMs come together and share the best skills they have so that everyone improves themselves and learns a lot. And lastly, we have a lot of career amplification opportunities. We make sure that our members' voices are amplified, that everyone has the chance to build a very strong personal brand, which is very, very important, also as an aspiring PM, but also as a PM. So these are our three key offerings. And now I'm going to kindly welcome Linda. Thank you so much, Linda, for joining us. Linda is amazing. Last summer, I had the chance to do an internship at Microsoft, and she's always been there for me to respond all my interview prep questions, career-related PM questions, absolutely everything. So I'm sure she will give you so much valuable advice. And Linda is currently a director at the Microsoft Garage in Ireland. She's been a director at Microsoft Garage in Cambridge, the US. And she's been a PM all the way up to principal PM manager, which is very, very inspiring. Thank you for joining us, Linda.
I am thrilled to be here, and it's so good to see Mara again. Loved having you as part of our internship program. What was it? It was just last year, right?
Yes,
awesome. Very good. Well, I first of all, I read up a little bit on the APM Club, and I'm super inspired with what you've got going on, and super thrilled to be here. I did prepare a few slides, so hopefully you all will indulge me as I kind of share some things here. Let me just make sure that comes through okay. And my goals, I have kind of three goals today. One is just to tell you a little bit about my career history and how I got to where I am today. I want to also then talk about the role that I currently have and the internship program and things like that we run. And then I came prepared because I run an internship program and because I've interviewed hundreds of aspiring interns. I brought with me four kind of tips and tricks that I feel are important about interviewing. And then I also brought, if we have time, I brought some career tips that have helped me in my career throughout my tenure at Microsoft that I'll also share with you if we have time. So we'll get started and kind of talk through this. But so just yes, please.
Quickly. So the logistics for the event, Linda is going to present her deck for about 40 minutes. We'll have a very good PM-focused conversation and let some questions if we still have time within these 40 minutes. And then everyone has the chance to ask questions for Linda through Slido for 20 minutes. We'll share the Slido link on the chat. We'll share it again. Make sure to get your questions there. Sorry, Linda, go ahead.
No. Thank you. Thank you for that clarification. I really appreciate that. So and this is going to be super quick, my history. So I have a non-traditional background when it comes to Microsoft PM. So, typically if you're a Microsoft PM, you went to school to become a computer scientist or, did computer software engineering or something of the like. That's not my background. I actually have a background in political science. So, and that was going to be my plan. So I graduated back in, I'll just be super transparent about what year. I graduated in 1992, so a long time ago. So I've been around for a long time. And so I graduated with a bachelor's degree in political science with a minor in Spanish. And so my plan was to go into politics. Like that was the whole, that was the plan. I was going to become the governor of California. I was going to become the president of the United States. Anyways, I had this whole big, huge plan. But that unfortunately was not meant to be. And so while I was kind of in my career planning phase, just coming out of college, I had a roommate at the time who was working for a high-tech company called WordPerfect that was a competitor. It doesn't exist anymore, but it was a competitor at the time to Microsoft. She had an opening and she came home one day and said, hey, we've got an opening here, you should apply. And being one of those that kind of likes risk and checking things out, I figured I would just give it a try, and I applied. And that ended up being the best decision I ever made, because in that period while I was applying and interviewing for this role with WordPerfect, I found out that my career plans that I had in politics fell through, and they were no longer, the role that I was seeking was no longer available to me. And so now here I was, out of the blue, in this new life, a completely different career path than what I had planned. So, but there's a famous quote by Abraham Lincoln, which is, whatever you are, be a good one. And this is something that my dad used to tell to us kids growing up always. It's like, whatever you choose to do, be a good, when you're out mowing the lawn, be good at mowing the lawn. When you're taking out the garbage, be good at that. And then that kind of translated into, whatever it is that you decide to do for your career, do whatever you want to do, but just try to be good at it. So here I was now in this new, on a completely different career path than what I had planned. And now I was in this high-tech company, and my first role actually was as a Danish typesetter. I didn't speak Danish, and I had no idea what typesetting was, but here I was. And I was gonna buckle down, and I was gonna be good at it. And so I actually worked for the WordPerfect product line for about 6 years, and there were some different companies that came in and bought WordPerfect out. So it was actually WordPerfect, Nobel, Corel that I worked for. And I transitioned around and did several different roles within that company. So I started out as a Danish typesetter. I worked my way up to a technical instructor. I worked my way up out of that to a technical editor role. And then eventually I became an international program manager for the WordPerfect product line. That was with Corel at the time. And it was while I was in this role that I got a call out of the blue from Microsoft to saying, it was a Microsoft recruiter saying that they had a position for me that they would be interested in me applying for. And so again, being the type of person I am, I'm like, why not? So send me the job description, I'll take a look at it. And I remember getting the job description and laughing out loud, because it was a program manager role with a group called Product Release Services. That's a org that no longer exists at Microsoft, but it was at the time. And I just didn't think that I had, like, of all the qualifications they were looking for, I thought that I had none. Like there was nothing on there that I felt that I was qualified for. And I remember thinking, like, who saw something about me online and thought, hey, she'd be a good fit for this, let's try it out. Because I have no idea where that was coming from. But I figure, hey, at worst, they're going to say no. At best, I get a, trip they're going to fly me to Seattle free, and I get to stay in a nice hotel, and I'll, get some interviewing skills, and I'll just, kind of see where it goes. I had no expectations whatsoever going into that interview loop for getting that job. So this was a Monday. I flew to Microsoft on Monday. I interviewed on Tuesday. Tuesday night I flew back. I was living in Orem, Utah at the time, and got a call Wednesday afternoon from the same Microsoft recruiter offering me a job for the role. And I was floored, because I'm like, I couldn't believe it. But I accepted the position. I packed all of my belongings up that weekend, and I moved to Seattle, Washington, and I started at Microsoft as a program manager for the Product Release Services Group that following Monday. So it was very, very, very quick. Okay, let me just go to the next slide, because I think this next slide is hilarious. Okay, so I found this is my original Microsoft badge. So this was back in 1998. And the funny thing is when you zoom in, I don't know if you guys can see, let me move this thing out of the way. Look at my eyes. Okay, don't even look at the hair. The hair is crazy, but look at my eyes. Those are just like crazy eyes. And I think that actually says it all. It's like, here, I'm like, what have I done? I've just like completely moved across the country to a place where I don't know I have no family or friends here. And I'm going to be doing this role that I have no idea what it is, but I'm going to try to be a good one at it. And so I became a program manager. And I will say, and I'm going to be super transparent, my first few months at Microsoft in this role were really, really hard. so hard that I actually contemplated leaving. Well, in fact, not only that, but 6 months into my role, I actually decided like, I can't do this anymore. And I actually tendered my resignation at that point. And of course, my manager comes running down the hall. She comes in and she shut the door behind her. And we had a really long conversation about the culture at Microsoft and what it meant to be a program manager. And she gave me some tips and tricks on how to acclimate to the role and to the culture, and really kind of figure out how to find my place there. And so, and I think a lot of that, the fact that it was a program manager role, and let's be super on, and Mara can probably speak to this as well too. The program manager role at Microsoft is really hard to describe because it differs so wildly depending on the group that you're in. And so a very simplistic view of the role is that a program manager at Microsoft is the person that answers the customer questions of what are we building, when are we building it, and how do we build it. So that's a very simplistic definition of what a program manager is. But depending on the group that you're in, you could actually be someone who writes specs, or you could actually be someone who does design work, or you could actually be someone who does the project management stuff, or you could be someone who does something wildly different as well too. And that has been my experience as well. So I, like Mara said at the very beginning, so I've been at the company for over 22 years now, and my official title at the company has been the entirety of my career program manager. Now I've had wildly different roles. I've done support management, I've done product management, I've done operations management, I've done event management, I've done community engagement management, leading up to where I am today, which is running the garage, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. But it is definitely a role that is ambiguous. It's definitely a role that is evolving. It's an evolving discipline at Microsoft. And I think that that's actually kind of a good thing, because what's happening is that the leaders evolve the discipline to be the most relevant for the role in the org and what they need that role to be at that time. And so anyway, so that's kind of what has been my experience. That led me to, let me see if I can go to the next slide, the 22 years that I'm here. I put this slide in here because a lot of people don't know that there's a tradition at Microsoft, and it is a dying tradition. Those of us that have been here a long time still do it, but I think a lot of the new people don't. But there's a tradition that every time you have an anniversary, you're supposed to bring in a pound of M&Ms for every year you've been at the company. So here you see 19, 20, and 21 years. I couldn't actually do 22 this year because of COVID, because people can't, well, obviously we're not seeing anybody, and plus people couldn't dip their hands into a big vat of diseased M&Ms, if you want to call it that. Anyway, so I've been here 22 years. I've not looked back. I've loved every minute of it. It hasn't always been easy. It's been actually very challenging at times, very ambiguous at times, very risky at times as well too, but definitely well worth it. So, okay, so just to quickly talk about my role in the garage right now. So as Mara said, I'm the director of the Microsoft Garage in Dublin, Ireland. Before this, I was in Boston. And then before that, for 18 years, I was in Redmond. So I was in Redmond for 18 years and then Boston for 3 years. And now I'm in Ireland here. And I should be here about 3 years, I think, ish before I head back to Redmond. But my role is basically the leader of the garage programming. And what that programming includes is 3 primary areas. One is the space. So we actually have these really beautiful spaces around the world where we have makerspace, advanced makerspace. We have space for people, Microsoft employees, to come and hack and learn and engage and things like that. So managing the space. I also manage the global hackathon. So once a year, Microsoft does this big, huge hackathon where the entire company comes and takes a week off of their day job to hack on what inspires them. And really, it's an opportunity to learn, to experiment, to meet new people, to work across organizational boundaries. It's an opportunity to practice our cultural attributes. And so that's a really beautiful way of putting into practice these things that we that we aspire from a culture standpoint. And then the last thing that I do is actually we run an internship program, and it's a different internship program than traditional. So Microsoft runs several different kinds of intern programs. They run an Explorer program where is like, if you're not really sure if you want to be a dev or a PM or a UX person, an Explorer intern will actually spend, for the 12 weeks that they're with Microsoft, 4 weeks delving into each one of those areas. So for 4 weeks, you'll work dev, for 4 weeks, you'll work PM, and for 4 weeks, you'll work UX or design. And so it really kind of gives you a good understanding of what those 3 roles are at Microsoft. And then you can decide, which area you're most interested in. Then there's the traditional internship role where you get hired on and you work on a team of full-time Microsoft employees, and you work on whatever part of the product lifecycle that team just happens to be on at the time. So if they're in release, you'll work on release. If they're in design, you'd work on design. So it just depends on the team and the project that they have you working on. The Garage Internship Program is a little bit different in that we actually bring in a cohort of interns, and then this cohort of interns are broken up into individual teams and given the opportunity to work on an idea from start to finish. So they get the idea, and at the end of the 12-week period of time, they have to hand something off to the sponsoring team of the idea that they received. And we give them coaching, we give them mentoring all along the way, but it's really up to their kind of ingenuity and creativity to take that idea from idea to prototype. And that's the Garage Internship Program. So as part of that internship program, I interview a lot. I interview a lot of candidates as they come in for the internship program. And so what I wanted to do is there's just a few things that I wanted to kind of share. There's Mara, by the way, right there in the middle. This was her cohort last summer that was with us there in the Boston area. And now listen, there's 1,000 different interviewing tips that you can read up on. And in fact, I would highly encourage you that if you haven't done so already, go out online and just Bing, or Google. You can Bing the interviewing tips, and you can have all kinds of things that come out. Research those things, and I don't want to go into all kinds of details in terms of what all of the different things that you should prepare for. I would highly encourage you to do that on your own. But what I would like to do is just kind of share from my experience interviewing candidates for the internship program. There's one really most important area that has 4 components to it that I want to share with you today, and hopefully you'll find this useful. But there's this famous saying, which is preparation prevents poor performance. I think that's a famous saying, right? Proper preparation prevents poor performance. And so I will say my number one thing is you've got to come into an interview prepared. And there's 4 areas of preparation that I want to talk to you about, but it's really super duper important that you spend a good amount of time preparing yourself for the interview loop that you're about to go into. And again, let's talk about what those 4 things are. Okay. The first thing is practice. Practice talking out loud. Find a family member, find some friends to do a mock interview with you, and practice your answers to questions. And again, if there's a certain role that you're applying for, what you can also do too is go out on the internet and actually search for sample questions for the role that you're going to be interviewing for, and then practice your answers to those questions. And the purpose for that is you've got to get crisp. You got to get your answers to be super crisp. There's no bloviating, right? You don't want to bloviate or add fluff or flowery commentary to your answers. You want them to be authentic and crisp. And so really what helps me, the reason I have this picture is because I actually practice in front of a mirror. And now that we're actually in mask season, you can put your mask on, walk down the street and practice out loud like no one will know, right? Because you've got your mask on. But I would say it just really helps you kind of hone down the answers to the questions that you know you're going to be asked. And again, you want to make sure that they're authentic and that they're crisp. In addition to that, presumably you have a job description of the role that you're applying for that actually has a specific set of skills and requirements for the job that you're interviewing for. So for example, let's say like you're interviewing for a PM role and they're looking for somebody who's self-motivated, somebody who's proactive, or maybe they're looking for somebody who has problem-solving skills or whatever that may be. So what you want to do is you want to practice out loud your answers to questions and weave those things into your answers. So like, for example, as you're telling the story of a specific project that you've worked on, you want to weave in an example of you being self-motivated or of you being proactive or of you having problem-solving skills. These are the things that the hiring manager is looking for anyway. And so if you can practice your answers by weaving those things into your answers, that can actually set you apart from others. And so that's just really, really huge. Another thing that I will say before I shut up and move on to the other three is you've got a resume, right? And I would say you should practice answering questions on every single thing that you have on your resume. Because listen, it always surprises me when I'll have the student there and I'll ask them something about a line item on the resume and they act like they don't know what I'm talking about. I'm like, well, you wrote it right here in your resume. So I guarantee if it is on your resume, someone at some point is going to ask you about it. So if it is on your resume, you had better be able to speak to it. You had better be able to answer questions about it. If you don't think you can speak intelligently about something that you have on a resume, you need to take that thing off. So anyway, so that's another thing as well too. Okay, so summary number one or preparation tip number one is you got to practice talking out loud. That can really help you. Okay, moving on to the next one. And again, at any time, Mara, if you want me to stop, I'll stop and answer questions. But so the second tip is that you got to do your research. You got to do your research. You need to come prepared having researched the company that you're interviewing with. You got to come prepared knowing what that company is all about. Who is the CEO? What is the mission and the vision? What are the big bets? What are the long-term strategies? What are the trends in that industry that company belongs to? This is another thing that always surprises me because when I'm talking to an interview candidate, I can tell within the first 10 minutes of talking to the candidate if they've researched the company or not. And it always surprises me. I'm like, at a minimum, you at least got to know who the CEO is. So that when I say Satya, you should know who I'm talking about. Satya Nadella, he's the CEO of Microsoft. So if I'm in an interview with you and I'm like, yeah, this is Satya's, the garage is, Satya's is the physical manifestation of Satya's vision of growth mindset. You should know what it is that I'm talking about when I say that out loud. So, you got to research the company. So be prepared to, and then find ways to weave your knowledge of the company into your story and your answers of your questions as well too that you're going to get as well too. That is always super beneficial. As you're answering a question, you could say, yes, and I understand that, here's what I worked on in this project, here's how I demonstrated this and this and this. And this is I thought is a really good demonstration of, Microsoft's a cultural attribute of customer obsession. Gold, that would be gold, right? So research the company. Just one little benefit as well too is if there's a way that you can find out who you're going to be interviewing with before. Now, most times you're not going to know who you're interviewing with, but sometimes you may be able to find out, hey, you're going to interview with this particular person. If you can get the name of the person you're going to interview with, research them on LinkedIn. Stalk them on LinkedIn. Find out who they are. Find out what their career trajectory was. One of the things that can do to benefit you is that will help you develop a rapport with the person who's going to be interviewing you. And that always makes the interview go just a skosh smoother when you're able to build that rapport. So if you have an opportunity to find out who it is you're interviewing with and then stalk them on LinkedIn and find out about them, then you can ask them questions about their career when it's time. Okay, so preparation tip number one, practice. Preparation tip number two is you got to do your research about the company before you come into the interview. Okay, preparation tip number three. This is all about questions, right? You've got to come prepared to ask questions. So I always leave 10 to 15 minutes at the end of an interview for a candidate to ask me questions. And it is so stinking frustrating when I get the, oh yeah, I think all my questions have been answered. I don't have any. Okay, make something up. Ask anything. You know, ask me what it's like to be a woman in the industry. Like, ask me what it took to get me to where I am today. Ask me where I see the company going in the future. Even if you don't care at all about the answer that you're going to get, or if you've asked the same question of every interview you had up until you get to me, that is irrelevant. You've got to come prepared with a list of questions to ask the interviewer, because they're always going to leave you time at the end to ask questions. And sometimes, a lot of times, by the thoroughness and the thoughtfulness of the questions that you ask, that is another thing that can kind of set you apart a little bit from others. So I would just say, come prepared with a list of questions so that when the time comes when I say, okay, hey, we've got 15 minutes left. Do you have any questions for me? You can be like, yes, I do. And pull out your notepad or your whatever it is that you've got. And then start asking your questions to fill up the rest of the time. So preparation tip number 3 is you got to come with questions, regardless of whether or not you want to hear the answer. You need to have questions prepared to ask the interviewer when that time is allowed. Okay. All right. One more, and then I'm going to shut up. Okay. Preparation tip number 4. Oh wait, let me move my slide. Sorry. Is you got to come prepared to listen. And this sounds, typically when I say this to people, they don't really understand what I mean when I say this. If you're like me, or if you're like most people, when you're going into a situation like an interview, you're a little bit stressed, right? You're a little bit stressed. You're a little bit anxious, a little bit nervous. You've prepared, you've got all your answers prepared, and by darn it, you're going to, get those answers out in the way that you prepared. And a lot of times when we're in these situations, we get so consumed with making sure we say the things that we practiced that we actually forget to listen. And so my preparation tip number 4 is like, okay, yes, you got to come prepared with the questions. You got to come prepared with answers. You got to come prepared, having done your research. But then you actually got to like mentally prepare yourself to say like, okay, when I'm done talking, I'm going to listen. I'm going to listen to what these folks have to say. And so that can sometimes be harder than it sounds. But if you can just make that kind of mental switch that you're going to listen to some of the cues and things like that. And when I say listen, I'm talking about verbal and also nonverbal cues. Another example that I'll give you here is, and this happens a lot, is like sometimes we get these candidates in and sometimes we ask questions that are intentionally harder than you're going to be able to answer. That's just the trick of the trade, because we want to see how you're going to handle yourself, right? We want to see how you deal with this ambiguity, how you're going to think on your feet, how you're going to answer a question that may be a little bit harder for you to answer. At the same time, it's like, we want you to succeed. We want you to succeed. And so a lot of times what we'll do is like, we'll actually kind of seed you in the direction. We'll kind of like feed you the things that you need to get you to where we want you to go. So if you're listening to your verbal and the nonverbal cues, that can kind of help. You're going to do great, but that can kind of help you get to where it is that we want you to go into the answers that we want you to get to. And so definitely prepare yourself to listen. There's another thing I want to tell you in terms of like nonverbal cues. This happens a lot as well too. So you got to watch the person who's interviewing you, because there could be times when you're answering questions and you may be getting, I don't know, you're talking, maybe you're getting like super technical into a very specific thing that the interviewer may or may not understand, or maybe I don't know what it may be, but you can tell by the nonverbal cues, like if there's a perplexed look, like if you're telling me something and you look at me and I'm all like, huh? You can be like, is there anything I can clarify? You can stop what you're doing and say, hey, can I clarify anything for you? So it's really important to not only listen for verbal cues, but also pay attention to the nonverbal cues. Like if I'm getting fidgety, like if you're answering a question, I'm getting fidgety, it's like you're probably talking way too long and you need to like cut that answer off or like wrap it up. Or if I'm looking perplexed, maybe you want to stop me and say, hey, can I answer any questions or anything I can clarify for you there? Anyway, so definitely pay attention to verbal and nonverbal cues. Okay, those are my 4 interviewing tips. practice, practice, practice. What was the second one? I've already forgotten. Do your research. The third thing is like come prepared with questions. And then the last thing is listen, listen to verbal and then nonverbal cues. Okay, with that, I actually have a few career tips, but I want to stop first. And Mara, let me know if you want me to keep going on with my career tips, or do you want me to stop and ask or answer questions for you?
Linda, this is awesome. You can go on to the career tips. We have 6 more minutes before we start the Q&A, so we can talk the career tips. This is perfect. And then we'll get everyone's questions and move on that direction.
Okay, fabulous, fabulous, fabulous. Okay, so let me just, and I will blow through these in 6 minutes. I'll make them really fast. So this kind of brings me to you, right? And so, you know, as employees of whatever company you're going to be at, you're going to be given opportunities to unleash your ideas. You're going to be given opportunities to take risks, to follow your instincts. And, you know, during your course of your tenure, you're going to learn all kinds of new things. You're going to work with new technologies. You're going to work with people of different backgrounds, different ages, different disciplines. You're going to be empowered to do all these things. And so in my tenure at Microsoft, there are 6 things that have helped me along the way that I'll share with you here. And the career tip number 1 is like you own your career. You own your success. You own your failure. Whatever it is that you decide to do, whatever path you decide to take, you own the outcomes of that. And so one of the other things too that and Mara may have heard this already, but as I'm talking to interns and other folks about career tips, the thing that is important here is that I talk about is this thing called systems level thinking. So in whatever role that you eventually take on in your careers, that role actually doesn't live in a vacuum. It exists in a system, and there's things that are happening all around that role. There are other teams, there are sister teams, there's a larger organization, there are teammates that you work with as well too. And so one of the things that I highly recommend that folks do when they take on a new career challenge is spend some due diligence at the beginning of that role to really understand the system within which that role sits. Like, who are the other key players within the system? Who are the key influencers? Find all of those things out. Learn about what dependencies others have on you and dependencies that you have on others. And the more that you can learn about that system within which your role sits, the more benefit to your career that will have, and that will allow you the knowledge to actually learn and grow and do other things within that system. The another thing too that I want to share with you as well is these 3 things called clarity, alignment, and intensity. So in whatever role that you have, make sure that you are completely clear in terms of what that role is. What does success look like? You know, what are the day-to-day things that you need to do as part of that role? The second thing is alignment, right? How does that role align to your team's goals, to your org's goals, to the company goals? Make sure that you're very clear in terms of what that alignment is. And if you find that there's a misalignment there between what you're doing and the goals of your team, your org, and the company, then have a conversation with your leadership to make sure to shift what it is that you're doing to make sure that you're aligned. And then the last thing is intensity, right? Making sure that you're approaching your tasks with the appropriate level of intensity to get those things done. You know, how urgent is this thing that you're working on? And things like that. So clarity, alignment, and intensity. Okay, so that's career tip number 1. You own your career. Career tip number 2 is you got to be you. You got to be you. So this is one of the things that I really struggled with when I first started at Microsoft, because I found that because I had such a different background in schooling, that I was very different from most of the individuals that I was working with, like super different. And so I was reading this book once called Eat That Frog by Brian Tracy. And that is a book that I highly recommend that you all get. And basically in that book, he talks about, it's like, find out why it is that you're on the payroll. Find out what strengths that you have. Find out what it is that makes you uniquely you, and then leverage the hell out of that. And I will encourage you to say, like, once you find out what those things are, and then you look for opportunities in not only in your team, but your org and your company to leverage those strengths and the things that you're really good at, that will really help you move your career forward. And I realize we only got 2 minutes left, so I'm going to be fast. Career tip number 3 is you got to develop your soft skills. Listen, if you're coming out of college, you're all coming out wicked smart anyway, right? If you're going to get hired onto a company, you're getting hired on because you're super smart. That's just the way things are. But what's going to give you a little bit of edge in your career are actually your soft skills. Like, are you dependable? Do you have a positive attitude? Are you self-motivated? Are you team-oriented? What are your communication skills like? What are your collaboration skills? Do you have attention to detail, drive, passion, things like that? So spending a little bit of time developing your soft skills, that is something that without fail will actually give you a little bit of edge over others. So making sure you develop your soft skills. Okay, career tip number 4, you gotta be willing to take risks. You gotta be willing to take risks. You gotta be open to new experiences, because you never know if there's something out there that you haven't tried before that you're super passionate about. Like when I first, even 10 years ago, I never knew that I had such a ginormous passion for hacking and hackathons until I experienced it for the first time. And now that is something that I absolutely love and something that I can do for the rest of my life. I mean, I love it. I never would have known that I had the passion for that if I hadn't actually taken the risk to jump into a role that gave me the opportunity to experience that. And so I would say be open to new things that come around you, and don't be afraid to take risks. And failure is actually okay, because failure actually leads to learning. Okay, career tip number 5, I'm gonna be really fast. You gotta get, you gotta connect with people around you. The best things you're ever gonna make ever in life are gonna be done with other people. And so I would highly encourage you, get to know the people around you. The person sitting next to you today could actually be your boss tomorrow, or they could introduce you to your next partner or your next best friend or your next boss. And so really spend some time to connect with those around you. I'm actually using connections that I've made when I very first started Microsoft years ago. Even so, when I first started at Microsoft, I actually took a trip within my first year to Dublin. And there are some people here that I met back then that I'm like, I didn't even know that they were still here. And they're people that I've connected with, and they've been able to help me with some of the, kind of acclimating myself here. So I would just say, connect to the people around you. Okay, last one. You got to stay curious. Stay curious. There's so much stuff out there. Always be learning new things, always be trying new things, always be experimenting, always be curious about that next thing. Someone may say, like me, hey, we've got this job that you may be interested in. And you may think like, holy crap, I'm not even anywhere near, experienced enough to take on this role. You never know. So I would just say, stay curious and keep yourself learning. Okay, I'm gonna stop now. Hopefully that was useful. I'll turn the time over back to Mara.
This was super useful. Thank you so much. Loved it. So much insightful and great advice. So now we're gonna move on to the questions. Should we share the Slido screen and we'll take it from there?
Yeah, I'm sharing the screen.
Great. Thank you, Krishna. And Linda, as you can see in the chat, there's very good feedback about your presentation. Everyone is very excited.
Oh, I'm so glad. I'm so glad.
Yes, you were great.
So we're gonna start with the questions that have most likes. Everyone, feel free to go on Slido, rate the questions you find most relevant, ask your own questions. So the first one, as you can see, is I'm an international student studying in India. How can I stand out from thousands of applicants for APM programs?
Oh, that's such a great question. And that's a hard one. I would say, let me just answer it by saying this. So when you think about like your resume, because I think one of the questions that someone asked too is like, what are some good things or some strengths and weaknesses that you can put on a resume to kind of help you stand out a little bit? I would say that what's really important on a resume is to make sure that you articulate clearly projects that you've worked on, and then your specific role that you played on that project. And if in that description of your role within that project could also include some of the skill sets they're looking for in that job. So like, I'll give you an example. Like I have a different resume for every job that I'm applying for. And what I'll do is I'll actually weave in the skill sets that they're looking for in the job description into my resume, so that it actually kind of bumps my resume higher up to the top. So I would say, on your resume, making sure that you've clearly articulated projects that you've worked on and your role on those projects. So resumes that I've seen that are not, like, I won't even look at them, or when I'm reading through the resume and I don't really know what it is that candidate actually did. I mean, I see the project there, but I don't know what it is that you actually did. And so really, really being articulate in terms of the projects that you worked on and what specific your role was on that project, I think that will set you apart a little bit from others. And then, of course, weaving in the skill sets of the job description into the verbiage of your resume can be very helpful as well too. Hopefully that was a good answer to your question. That's a hard one.
That was a very good answer, and that kind of covers the second question that you see here, top suggestions to ensure your resume gets passed through. Do you have anything to add to that, the screening?
Yeah, that I would say yes. Agreed. Just making sure that your resume is not, I use the word fluff a lot, but just making sure that it's like super articulate, and it doesn't have to be long. Just making sure that you include, again, the projects that you've worked on and your specific role that you played on those projects. That's important.
Perfect. So next one, I've been advised to create a personal story to make myself stand out for interviews. What makes a story good, compelling from a recruitment point of view?
Ooh, I would say, yeah, that's a great question. I would say first and foremost would be that your story is authentic.
Mm-hmm.
Now, whatever story that you choose to tell, make sure it is authentically you. Because sometimes, when I come in and I can kind of tell if that story is like bloviate a little bit or maybe puffed up a little bit or something. But I really, really, really appreciate stories that include failures. Like I'll be talking to an intern candidate and they'll tell me a story about a project they worked on it and like, wow, it really failed because for whatever reason. And then here's what I did to kind of get us back on track. Those are the kinds of things that I really appreciate because they're sincere and they demonstrate self-critical awareness, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would say, making sure that your story is one that is authentic would be first and foremost my recommendation there.
Amazing. So considering the high interest level in PM careers, do you see a high supply, low demand scenario in the future? Will PMs be relevant?
Oh, that's a great question. I don't see a future when we don't have PMs. You're absolutely right. There's a high level of interest, but there's positions open. And so, and if you haven't spent time out on careers.microsoft.com to look at the open PM positions that are available, I would highly, let me back up a little bit. Here's another piece of advice that I always give to interns as well too. Spend some time out on the careers website and actually look for the PM resume, not PM resumes, but look for PM job descriptions that you're interested in. Take a specific look at the skill sets, the requirements, and the things that they're looking for. And then look for opportunities in your current situation to gain the skills you need to learn that role. So like, for example, if they're looking for someone who has experience with Python, I'm making this up, go, in your current situation, learn Python. If they're looking for someone who's got problem solving skills, look for opportunities in your current situation for you to demonstrate your problem solving skills. And then those are the things then you can weave into your storyline, and then you can weave back into your resume that will help you kind of stand apart. So I would say look and see how they're written. What are the things that they're looking for, and then look for opportunities to gain those skills in your current situation so that when the opportunity arises for you to interview, you'll be like, okay, I got this because I've already demonstrated that I've got XYZ skill set.
Awesome. I guess there's something we should all do throughout the year, right? As we want to go for an opportunity in the long term or short term, we can look through careers websites, see what are the relevant skills, make sure we gain them, not just during the recruitment season, all in
Yes.
Right?
Okay. I do that even still today. I've been here for 22 years. I still look out on the career website and look for okay, just for kicks and giggles, if I wanted to find a partner level position, what kind of skill sets are they looking for? Okay, let's see if I can look for opportunities to develop those skills in my current role. So yes, that's something you would want to do throughout your entire career.
Awesome. So how much of technical knowledge one should have to break into product management?
Ooh, that is a great question. So there are technical PM roles, like Mara, I think yours is a technical PM role, right?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, and so in fact, you might actually be a better one to answer this. So there are technical roles, PM roles, and then there are non-technical PM roles as well too. But given that aside, it depends on the position, and it depends on the org and the team with which that PM role will reside. But Mara, what would you say on this one?
I think it's very hard to tell because it, as you said, it depends on the team. It depends on the project within the team. Every project, like all the projects are so different. So it's hard to come up with a universal answer that would be valuable. And I also just started about 2-3 weeks ago my PM role at Microsoft, and I'm still trying to figure out what more technical knowledge I need to enhance. So I'm like also having this question, and I'm trying to learn as I go as well. There's a lot of technical skills you learn as you go because Microsoft technologies are so complex. So no one expects you to come out with all the skills there. Like as long as you have some programming tool sets, some critical thinking, that's what they want to see, that you can solve problems.
Yeah.
I can quickly jump in for this one. So I did 5 PM internships before I landed, and one of them was also a PM intern at Microsoft. And then I landed up at this APM role at Salesforce. And believe it or not, all 5 of them were so different. Some of them was completely like competitive analysis, right? Like you just doing competitive analysis. One of them was more about raising money with the startup, with the CEO of the startup. So what I think the answer to this question is how much is the basic minimum you need to even perform the business operation kind of roles, right? You should at least know what basic technologies are, like what is a platform, right? How does a network, social network work? If you're working at Facebook, and even if it is a business oriented role, or if you're working at Azure and it's a very business oriented role, my internship was completely on pricing strategies and all. I needed to know what Azure, what cloud is, right? And it's always an acquirable skill. The basic minimum technological skill is acquirable. Yes, if you go into, like Mara's role is super technical, she works with databases and all, so you need to dig deeper in that role. But I personally feel to have that basic minimum knowledge, you don't need a degree. You need that passion, and you need to know what you're going to be working on and how much would you need to know for the work that you're going to do. So that's I think that's how I approached my preparation for all the internships and roles.
I would say amen to everything you just said. Yes.
Amazing. Let's move to the next one. Is it damaging to apply to multiple roles at Microsoft?
No. No. I would say apply for however many you need.
Even if you apply for more PM roles in different areas, as this person mentioned?
I don't know that there is any drawback to applying for multiple roles. No, I would say go for it.
Is an international student studying in the US authorized to work in Canada or Ireland? If there is a garage internship in Vancouver.
That is a great question that I do not have an answer to. That would be completely dependent on like visas and things like that. So that is unfortunately outside of my scope of influence.
Yeah.
Apologies.
The next question, does recruiter really look for certification like CSPO, product quality grade to shortlist candidates? Oh, I never had any of these certifications. Are these beneficial to break into product management?
That's a great question. I don't know that I've worked with anybody that has any of those certificates. I'll just go back to what I'm gonna say I'm gonna butcher your name. Aronia? Did I say that wrong? Anyway, Arun. Okay, thank you. It's like it's your tenacity, it's your passion, it's your drive, it's those things that kind of propel you forward. Maybe a certificate would help you get your foot in the door, but that's not something that I'm familiar with, just because I haven't worked with anybody that has any of those. So sorry, I don't know the answer to that.
No problem. So what do you think differentiates Microsoft from other tech companies with respect to an individual's career growth, especially as a PM?
Ooh, well, okay. I've only ever worked for one other tech company, so I'm probably actually, this might be another question for you guys to answer as well too, but Microsoft is just awesome, right?
Yes.
I've been here for 22 years. I get asked a lot. It's like, do you think that you've been hindered, being a woman as a PM? I'm like, no, I think that's actually helped me. I have to say, I will say this as well too. So I feel like I've worked for 3 different companies. I've worked for the Bill Gates Microsoft, the Steve Ballmer Microsoft, and now the Satya Nadella Microsoft. All 3 very different cultures. Now is probably my favorite time, just because it's very inclusive, it's very diverse, it's very much embraces growth mindset and embraces failure as it leads to learning. And so I would say, I don't know if that sets Microsoft apart from others, because I haven't worked with other companies, but that's one thing that I really love about working for Microsoft, is that inclusiveness and that diversity push as well.
Yeah, totally agree with that. Is there a way we can showcase the growth mindset in our resume? It's a good question.
Ooh, showcase growth mindset in your resume. I think that goes back to what I was saying before, which is, if you can articulate basically weave your story of the role that you played on that project, and especially if you're able to figure out how to articulate maybe some of the challenges. A lot of times in resumes, we want them to be like all flowery and, here's all the great stuff that I did, but you could be like overcame this challenge and still shipped on time or whatever. Those are the kinds of things that kind of demonstrate growth mindset, is like you had some challenges, but you were able to like overcome by your ingenuity and your way of getting around that. So you can weave that into your storyline for sure.
Great. I have 7 years of work experience in software development and want to switch to a PM role now. How to make my profile suitable for a PM role at Microsoft?
Ooh, that is a great question. And Mari, this may be a good one for you as well too. I know a lot of devs that switch over to PM roles. That's very, very common. And really it's born out of a desire to kind of grow your skill set and work in some of the more softer skills. And so I would say, how do you make your profile suitable for a PM role at Microsoft? Oof. That's a really, really, really great question. Maybe, okay, I will say this. This maybe is an opportunity for you to actually look at the job description of the PM, look for the specific skill sets that they're looking for, and then weave those things into the storyline of your resume. I think that would be helpful.
Yeah.
Like demonstrate how you had problem solving, demonstrate how you had attention to detail, demonstrate how you could think strategically. I think those are some of the things that are optimal for a PM role. And if you could demonstrate that you have those skills in your resume, I think that would be useful.
And one thing I would add is maybe show that you have the ability to persuade and bring people together to solve a common problem, like for a common goal, right? Because sometimes developers are great at getting things done by themselves and writing code and being super smart and all that, but show you have those people skills as well.
Yes, influencing for action, absolutely.
Yeah.
Being able to influence others. Whew, that is a huge thing for PMs, for sure.
Awesome. So while getting a referral, do you think getting a referral from a principal PM is better than getting a referral from a PM? Does hierarchy matter during referrals?
I don't know that a referral, the hierarchy of the person referring actually matters. I would say where that would differentiate is if either one of those actually contacted the hiring manager directly to refer you directly, as opposed to the referral tool. But I don't know that actually matters, if the hierarchy of the person referring.
I see.
Linda, then what is the most important factor in a referral? Is it that have you worked with your referral close enough so that they can talk about you? Like, what is that one differentiating factor from different
Yeah.
referral options?
Yeah. So when you're, I actually refer people a lot. And you have the ability to actually add your personal, so there's different kinds of referrals. Let me kind of back up. There's people that I don't know that will reach out to me and say, hey, can you refer me for this job? I'm like, sure. So I'll refer you and I'll say, I'm going to refer this person in, but I don't actually know them, but I'm referring them for this position. But then there's also the referral where it actually comes with a little bit of history. And I could say, not only do I know this person, but I can vouch for them in these areas. And I can actually type up and write and add to the referral my knowledge of working with that person. And so I would say those are the more relevant referrals, I think, where I'm referring somebody that I actually know and have worked with in the past and can demonstrate that I've actually witnessed this person demonstrate the skill sets that the job description is looking for. That I think is a great referral.
Got it. I didn't know that. That's very helpful. Why did Microsoft stop allowing employees to refer those with EDU emails this year?
Why did Microsoft stop allowing emails to refer those? Oh, did they? That's actually news to me. I did not know that. I'm gonna have to check up on that. I wasn't aware that was the. Maybe it's because EDU. There's actually two different kinds of career tracks. There's the student track, and then there's the professional track. And it I don't know. Maybe it's because of there's a different path for EDU emails. But I didn't know that was a thing. Sorry.
Could you tell us how referrals help our application?
How referrals help your application. And so, yeah, so basically what we were just talking about, which is if I were to refer Mara for a position before she came on here, because I had worked with her, when I go out and submit her name through the referral tool, I can actually add a personal note to it. That would be how a referral could help the application. That's one way, but just by having a personal referral from somebody within Microsoft, that is also helpful as well too. Microsoft gets hundreds of thousands of applications on a regular basis, and those that come through referrals actually, I don't know if it bumps it up the chain or whatnot, but having that referral can actually help.
So I think this is it, Linda. It's 12:01 PST. I know I have people from all over the world. So we're done with the event. Thank you so much for all the advice. This was so helpful. And it was fun as well. You have such great storytelling skills. It's like very engaging to listen to you.
Oh, and I love talking about this kind of stuff. So thank you for having me. And again, hopefully for a lot of you, this was useful. This was useful information for your Saturday. I know it's hard to give up some time on a Saturday for this kind of thing, but I really appreciate you all coming.
Thank you so much. So a few logistical details. Thank you all for participating. Please feel free to reach out with questions or anything, connect with us, engage with our community. We'd love to have you, especially as you become PMs. As you might know, APMC is an APM exclusive community. And at the same time, what we'd love to do, it would be very helpful if you guys could please complete the survey that we are going to send right now in the group chat. It takes 1 minute and it helps us a lot as we prepare next events to make sure that what we prepare is very useful for your needs. So please do that. That would be very, very helpful. And that's pretty much it. Please feel free to engage on social media, to post what you learned from Linda today. We'll make sure to amplify your posts. We have a lot of followers on APNC, about 3,500, I guess.
3,600, yes. More than that.
So,
and also,
sorry?
One quick thing, if you are an aspirant and you want to join APM Club, we are launching APM University, APM Club University Network on October 3rd. So please join us. We want to engage with all of you and have more of these amazing sessions with senior people.
Yes. So engage with us everywhere on social media. This is great. Thank you so much, Linda.
Thank you. And I just saw a note about connecting with me on LinkedIn. Yes. If anybody wants to connect with me on LinkedIn, feel free to do that.
Thank you. Great. Thanks, everyone. Have a fun weekend.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you, Linda.
Thank you.
Take care, everyone.
And complete the survey, please.